I worked at a small maritime museum on the East Coast during the summer after my first year of college. The place wasn't fancy. It was one of those quiet coastal towns where tourism trickled in just enough to keep the museums and historic spots alive. As part of my job, I was sometimes asked to do maintenance checks on the old lighthouse out behind the main museum building. It wasn't one of those bright, clean lighthouses you see in postcards. No, this one was long decommissioned. The paint was cracked and peeling. The iron railings were rusted to a reddish brown. The stone foundation was weather-worn and the whole structure creaked with every gust of salty wind that blew off the ocean. Still, the tourists loved the history of it. One weekend in late July, the museum manager asked if I'd be willing to stay overnight at the Lighthouse. They were thinking of starting a historic experience program, an overnight stay where brave visitors could spend the night in the old keeper's quarters for the thrill of it. Before they launched the idea to the public, they wanted someone to test it out, stay the whole night, and make notes on what might need improvement. Honestly, I didn't mind. It sounded kind of peaceful, quiet, plus they were paying extra. Before I go on, if you enjoy creepy true stories like this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. You really don't want to miss the next stories I've got coming. So, I packed a book, some snacks, a flashlight, and my phone charger. They gave me a heavy ring of old iron keys and a shortwave radio in case of emergencies. There wasn't great cell service near the cliff edge. The little room where the keeper used to sleep was tiny and dusty, but surprisingly cozy for one night. Old wooden bed frame, chip dresser, a small oil lamp on the desk. The walls were cracked and stained from years of moisture, and the faint scent of sea salt clung to everything. But it was fine. I figured I'd get some reading done, maybe nap a bit. The only strange thing was the sound of wind. Constant, relentless. It whipped around the top of the lighthouse, rattling the glass panes and groaning through metal fixtures like a breathless whisper. But that's what you expect in a place like this, right? Around midnight, I settled into the old chair by the window, listening to the steady creaks of the towers shifting in the breeze. But then, I started hearing something else. A dull knocking sound. At first, I figured it was the old weather vane on the roof or some loose shutter tapping against the wall. The wind was wild out there, but then I realized it wasn't coming from above or outside, it was coming from below. Specifically, the bottom of the spiral staircase. A slow, hollow sound, like someone knocking gently on the inside of the lighthouse door. I froze in place, my book halfway open on my lap. My mind immediately scrambled for an explanation. Maybe it was the museum manager, or one of the grounds crew checking on me. But why would they come this late? Why not radio me first? Why not call out? I waited, holding my breath. The knocking stopped. I slowly got up and crept down the winding iron staircase, my phone flashlight cutting a pale beam through the dark. Each step groaned under my weight, the cold metal cold against my bare feet. When I reached the base of the stairs, I pressed my ear gently against the door. Nothing, just wind. Cautiously, I unlatched the heavy lock and pulled the door open. The night outside was pitch black. The path leading back to the museum was empty. No flashlights, no footprints in the gravel, just a faint, distant crash of waves against the rocks. I shut the door and locked it again, brushed it off as my imagination. Maybe the wind had jostled something loose. I went back upstairs, but 15 minutes later, it happened again. 3 slow, steady knocks, clear as day, and this time I knew I'd locked the door. I had checked the bolt twice. No way anyone could have gotten inside. I stood at the top of the spiral stairs, staring down into the darkness below. Every instinct told me not to go down there again. Then I heard it, creaking, soft, rhythmic, like weight shifting on the metal stairs. Step by step, coming up, I held my breath, gripping the phone flashlight so tight my hand shook. I aimed the beam down the stairwell. Nothing, no figure, no shadow. Just the groaning sound of metal under pressure, like invisible footsteps climbing, one slow tread at a time. I backed away slowly, step by step, until I reached the keeper's room. I slammed the door shut and locked it from the inside. The little iron latch felt laughably small against whatever my mind was conjuring on the other side. And then silence, except for the wind. I sat in the old chair, back pressed against the door, holding the flashlight like a weapon. Hours passed. Every creak of the lighthouse made my heart skip. My ears strained for any sound that didn't belong. I didn't sleep, not a minute. If this story's already giving you chills, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss the next part. When the sun finally started to rise, weak gray light spilling through the cracked window, I grabbed my bag and left without looking back. As I crossed the gravel path toward the museum building, I saw the manager pulling into the lot. He rolled down the window and grinned. Well, how was our historic overnight experience? I stared at him. Don't open that lighthouse for overnight stays, I said quietly. He laughed. Thought I was joking. But I wasn't. And here's the part that really gets me. Later that day, I ran into one of the older maintenance guys. He'd worked at the museum for years. I casually mentioned the knocking and the creaking steps, half expecting him to roll his eyes and tell me it was just the old place settling. But his face went pale. He looked down, shook his head. Yeah, you probably shouldn't stay there overnight again, he muttered. I pressed him, but he wouldn't say more. To this day, I don't know what made that sound, but I know, in my gut, I wasn't alone in that lighthouse. And if you made it to the end of this story, and it made your skin crawl the way it did for me living through it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me what you think was in that tower with me. Stay safe out there, especially at night. This happened to me and my cousin Jamie a few years ago, during what was supposed to be a relaxing weekend fishing trip. Jamie's friend's family owned this old, private lighthouse way off the coast of Maine. It hadn't been in operation for years, but they kept the place maintained as part of their family property. You could only get there by boat. It sat on a tiny, rocky island about half a mile from the mainland. No other buildings, no other people, just a lighthouse and this rickety old storage shed that probably hadn't been opened in decades. It seemed like the perfect spot. Quiet, isolated, no cell service, no cars, no noise. Just us, the sea, and nature. Before I get into what happened, if you enjoy creepy real-life stories like this one, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. You'll definitely want to stick around for what's coming. The first day was honestly perfect. We fished off the rocks all afternoon, caught a few decent-sized fish, cooked them over a fire as the sun set, drank a couple beers, laughed about old college stories. It was peaceful in that way only the ocean can be. Nothing but the sound of the waves and the gulls crying far off in the sky. But after dark, the mood changed. We lit a fire pit near the base of the lighthouse, sitting in two old folding chairs Jamie had hauled over in the boat. The wind picked up a little, and the air turned colder than it should have been for July. Around 11 p.m., Jamie nudged me and pointed out to sea, and that's when we saw it. A small boat, way out past the rocks, maybe 50, 60 yards off the island, just sitting there. No sound, no movement. One faint light burning on its deck. It was hard to tell much in the dark, but the boat didn't seem to have any running lights. No engine rumble, no clanking gear or voices. Just sitting there, floating. We figured at first it was some lobster trapper working late, or some weird night fisherman. But something felt off. The light on the boat, it didn't look right. It flickered strangely, like candlelight, not the steady glow of a lamp or LED. And no matter how long we watched, the boat never moved. Jamie stood up and whistled, waving his flashlight toward the boat. No response. No sign of anyone moving on the deck. Just that dim flickering light. A weird feeling settled over us. The kind where your skin crawls and the little voice in your head says, something's not right here. For a few minutes, we both just stared out at it, not saying anything. The waves were gentle that night, and the tide was slow. No way that boat could drift that close to shore without an engine. That's when Jamie said, I'm gonna get a better look. He grabbed the old iron key from the keeper's room and climbed the lighthouse stairs to the top deck for a higher view. I stayed by the fire, still watching the water. The minutes dragged. Then I heard Jamie yell my name, his voice shaky and tight. I dropped the beer and ran up the stairs, 2 at a time. When I reached the top, he pointed out at the ocean, eyes wide. The boat was gone, not moved, not farther away. Gone. We scanned the entire horizon. Nothing. No light. No outline of a boat. No sound of a motor. The ocean was flat and silent, black as ink under the cloudy moon. We both stood there in stunned silence for a long time. And then it got worse. As we were about to head back down the stairs, a sound drifted up from below us. A faint clinking, like something tapping or scraping against the rocks near the shoreline. Jamie and I locked eyes. We moved carefully down the lighthouse stairs, flashlights drawn, hearts pounding. As we neared the base of the tower, the wind dropped suddenly. Everything went still. We swept our lights across the rocky shore. That's when we saw them. Footprints. Wet footprints. Bare human feet. Leading up from the water's edge toward the rocks. The prints were fresh, the water still shining in the light. But they stopped, right there, in the middle of the rocks. No sign of a person. No boat pulled up. No driftwood or debris. Just footprints. We followed the trail down to the last print, but there was nothing else. No drag marks. No trail away, as if whoever or whatever had made them simply stopped existing right there. Neither of us spoke. We just kept looking back at the water, at the darkness where the boat had been. The weird part? That beach was all jagged rock. There was no sandy shoreline. Anyone trying to wade up from the sea barefoot would have been cut and bleeding from the sharp edges. But the prints were perfect, smooth, no smears of blood. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. We stayed by the fire, sitting back to back, knives drawn, flashlights on, eyes locked on the dark shore. Every so often, I swore I could hear faint splashing sounds, like something stirring just beneath the water, like soft footsteps on wet stone. But nothing ever came out of the dark. If this story is creeping you out as much as it did us that night, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and lets me know you enjoy these real chilling stories. As soon as the sky began to turn gray with dawn, we packed up. No breakfast, no fishing, just got everything into the boat and left. When we reached the mainland, Jamie's friend, the one whose family owned the lighthouse, was waiting for us at the dock. He grinned when he saw our faces. "Let me guess," he said. "You saw the boat?" We froze. Neither of us had mentioned it to him. He nodded. "Yeah, everyone who stays there sees it. No one talks about it, though. My granddad says it's been showing up for years. Always just sitting there, then gone. And those footprints? Yeah, they've been seen too." I asked him what it was. He shrugged. "Some old fishermen went missing out there decades ago. Drowned. Folks say he comes back looking for the island sometimes. But who knows?" Jamie and I didn't respond. What could we say? We haven't been back since. But sometimes, when I'm standing near the shore at night, I still catch myself scanning the water, looking for that flickering light, wondering if it's out there, waiting. If you made it to the end of this story, let me know in the comments what part creeped you out the most. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more real terrifying stories like this. Stay safe out there, especially by the water. A couple of summers ago, I worked part-time with a historical preservation group. It wasn't glamorous work. We were hired to help restore an old lighthouse sitting on the rocky coast of Rhode Island. The place hadn't been operational since the late 1970s, left to rust and rot away. But now the state wanted to fix it up, clean it out, and turn it into a tourist attraction. I mostly did grunt work, hauling tools, clearing out trash, scraping, peeling paint. But I didn't mind. The location was peaceful. No tourists yet. No screaming kids. Just the sound of gulls, the distant crash of waves, and the steady ocean breeze cutting through the heavy summer air. There were only 4 of us working there, plus our supervisor, Don. Before I get deeper into this story, if you're into creepy real-life tales like this one, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more disturbing content. You won't want to miss what's coming. Anyway, This lighthouse was tall and narrow, the kind you see on old postcards. Rusty spiral stairs wound their way up to the top lantern room, where the huge glass lens used to sit. The whole place smelled of salt and iron. But the strangest part wasn't upstairs. It was underneath. Set into the hill below the lighthouse was a small wooden door, half buried in dirt and weeds. The basement. That door was always locked. Don had been very clear. Stay out of there. Nothing down there but old gear and broken crap. Dangerous junk. Nails. Glass. Forget it exists. No one argued, but the way he said it, too quickly, too stiff, it made me wonder. One afternoon, Don left early to make a supply run. It was just me and a co-worker named Nate left on site. We were finishing up a paint scrape job near the foundation when I noticed something weird. The basement door's heavy padlock wasn't shut. It hung loose on the latch, swinging gently in the breeze. I called Nate over. He raised an eyebrow. You think Don forgot to lock it? I shook my head. Don was old school, strict, careful. He'd never forget something like that. Curiosity got the better of us. I reached for the handle, expecting it to stick. It didn't. The door creaked open slow and loud, like something out of a horror movie. A wave of cold, damp air spilled out, smelling of mildew, old rope, and rust. We flicked on our flashlights. The basement was deeper than I thought. Stone walls, shelves stacked with dusty glass jars, frayed ropes, smashed lanterns. We poked around. Old logbooks with water-warped pages lay scattered across the table, the writing inside smeared and unreadable. And then we saw it. At the far end of the room, backed up against the wall, was a chair, a heavy, ancient wooden chair, bolted directly into the stone floor. Next to it, rusted iron shackles drilled into the wall, human-sized, 2 thick loops, perfect height for wrists or ankles. I felt the hair on my neck stand up. Nate tried to laugh it off. Maybe they used this to hold down equipment or something? But no equipment needed chains like that. I stepped closer. That's when I noticed the floor around the chair, gouged with deep, uneven scratches. Long lines carved into the stone itself, like someone or something had been dragging their heels or scraping their boots, struggling, fighting. Suddenly, the old wooden door behind us groaned. Loudly, we spun around fast. No one there, but the door was slowly swinging shut. I ran and caught it before it could slam us in. My hands were shaking as I clipped the padlock back into place. Nate muttered that we should get the hell out, and I didn't argue. We finished our shift in silence and didn't speak of it to Don. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the image of that chair. The shackles, the scratched stone. Who or what had been restrained down there? And why was that door unlocked? If this story is creeping you out so far, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I got more unsettling true experiences coming up that you won't want to miss. A few days later, I finally worked up the nerve to ask Don about the basement. We were having lunch out by the seawall. Just him and me. I casually brought it up, expecting him to shrug it off like before. But this time, he got quiet. After a long pause, he sighed. You ever hear about the last keeper of this lighthouse? He asked. I shook my head. Don stared out at the ocean. Back in the 60s, guy named Hale lived here alone. People in town said he was always a little strange, but something changed. Started talking to himself. Started seeing things. Said he heard voices in the fog. Ships calling out that weren't there. He locked himself up in the lantern room for 3 days straight. When the Coast Guard finally broke in, he painted the walls with tar. The same word, over and over. He glanced at me. Stay. Written 100 times. I swallowed hard. What happened to him? I asked quietly. Don hesitated. The sheriff chained him up in that basement. Said he was dangerous. Raving mad. They were waiting for a hospital crew to take him inland. But he didn't make it that far. I waited. He hanged himself. Right from that chair. Right where you saw it. A cold weight settled in my chest. That's why the door is supposed to stay locked, Don muttered. Supposed to keep things in or out. I don't know, but it's better that way. He stood, brushing off his jeans. Don't ever open again. I haven't, but I still think about it. About the feeling I got down in that dark room. Like we weren't supposed to be there. Like someone or something was still sitting in that chair, waiting. Sometimes at night, I dream about the basement, about the creak of chains, about the scuffing of heels across stone, and always, always that faint voice in the dark, whispering one word, stay. If you made it to the end of this story, let me know in the comments which part of these Lighthouse tales gave you the biggest chill. And don't forget to subscribe for more real scary stories like this. Stay safe out there and keep the doors locked.